looks like a dragon. I say we kill it.
A dragon! A dragon!
A snake crawling out of its own dead skin.
Mythical snake demon.
Rattlesnakes. It skinned and gutted a snake.
I need to keep you safe.
Snakes everywhere! Summon the Viper!
Good evening,
Oh,
as the
gosh.
phrase goes. Oh, now you're ashamed of it. It's only because we have an
We have a
invited
guest.
an invite
Do you
you today.
behave?
You must behave. Hey guys, what's going on? This is going to be a bit of a special episode, as you might have guessed. We are bringing on a friend of ours, a co-conspirator and a co-podcaster, as it were. Very cool guy, and we will give that formality, very formal formality, in just a moment. But we want to go ahead and give you guys our plugins, as always. Guys, we are the Christian Theological Dark Web. We would love you guys, if you have not done so already, to subscribe. You can do so for as little as $2.99 on Spotify, or the same amount, $3 on help me Shell Patreon. Thank you. Excuse me.
Yeah. Whew, man, that was hard.
Shell's
My
on it.
ESPN is
She
working.
got me. Thanks. Appreciate it. You guys can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on Spotify. You can find all of our connections, all of our social media and everything at solo.to/thectdw, solo.to/thectdw, solo.to/thectdw. And go ahead and follow us on Facebook, on TikTok, on Twitter, which is now X, and on Instagram, that nobody seems to care about. Not even me, but it's there if you want it. No, I'm kidding. We update everything as often as we can. And yeah, man, we got a cool episode today. I'm excited about it. I won't reveal the plot because that'll give away all the suspense. So, without further
We
ado,
need to suspend you.
excuse me, I'm the announcer, young lady. So you better, I'd say respect your elders, but that doesn't really work, does it?
Let's start over. Good evening,
Oh
everybody.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. Dude, just when you think that it can't get any worse, it's just like...
No, Oh, never underestimate. Hey, I have access to you, kind sir.
Yes. No, you're wonderful. I love you. I'm glad you're here with me. All right, guys. Well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest today, Justin from the Prometheus Lens Podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm good. What's going
Eric.
on, guys?
Derek
Just
Gilbert
hanging
does it better.
I mean, well, forgive me that I haven't been doing I don't have a communications degree. Jeez, haven't been doing radio
No,
for...
next to Casey Kasem, man,
A
Derek
mystical
Gilbert is
mountain.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Torches
Prometheus
high.
Lens.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, man, so you are from the Prometheus Lens, which is your own solo project. Am I right?
Yeah, I just launched it 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
Fresh
my
off the block.
podcasting is just fresh off the block. I mean, it's I've been doing this maybe a year. I started off with the Dig Bible podcast, and like I was telling you guys before the show, that was just originally a men's study group. I invited like 15, 20 guys that I knew from church to just expose them to Mike Heiser's Unseen Realm and, just the supernatural, quote unquote fringe stuff of the Bible. And
Yeah.
3 meetings later, my buddy Steve's like, "Hey man, we should be recording this." And here we are.
Boom, boom, boom. Cool, man. So you've been doing this for a little over a year now, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. Right on, man. So, I mean, that kind of explains how you got into podcasting. You kind of got thrown into it. I mean, it wasn't even like Yeah, man.
Here's to the wolves. I mean, I honestly had just started listening to the Naked Bible podcast. So, I mean, I was just honestly getting exposed to what a podcast was. So, yeah, I never done any kind of editing, audio, video, any of that stuff. So it was a thing from God. It had to be. There's no other way to explain it.
You felt like a Naked Bible
Right.
podcaster at that point, I'm sure. Man.
Right.
It's crazy. Yeah. Actually, that's funny that you say that. I'm like in the same boat as you, man. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I just was like, okay, this seems to work. Let's go with this now, and let's just keep doing it. That's little by little. We'll probably be able to share some tips, off air. Actually, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
All trial and error for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, is there anything you want to share with us about your background, man? I'm sure there's some pretty relevant stuff that's kind of brought you on this journey, huh?
Yeah, it was just I'm just, everyday 9 to 5 Joe, and got a wife, 2 kids, and a job. And I grew up in the church, as a Christian my entire life. And like me and Shelly was talking, pre-roll, I was that kid that was asking too many questions in Sunday school, probably getting on the Sunday school teacher's nerves. And I was always just, fascinated with the Word of God.
Kindred spirit
cool.
right there.
Yeah. And so I grew up in church, and of course, once I turned 15, 16-year-old and I started driving, I went into full rebellion and
Yes,
just
you do.
done what
As
I
one
wanted to
does.
do, yeah. So, yeah, but it was maybe my early 20s, mid 20s that I started, coming back to God and diving into the Word, and kind of led me to where I am now. But yeah, I've always had a curious mind and loved the Word, and I always, felt like there was more to the story than what I was being told. There had
Yeah.
to be. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about an infinite God.
Right.
He can't be that simple.
Correct.
But yeah, once I got exposed to Mike Kaiser's work, it's just that
going
door
back.
got kicked open.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah,
just
man.
started getting exposed to all this stuff, and I just couldn't put it down.
Right.
That's
It's like, oh, in the beginning, God did all these amazing things. And then and then he didn't do anything else. And then he just left the material world to spin and do its own thing or something. And
And have men make theories.
right.
Cool.
And every once in a while somebody will come and say something like, and the 3 men in the furnace didn't burn. And so the king said, didn't we put 3 in? It seems like there's 4 now. And one looks like a god. And we're like, heard nothing. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. One looks like God. Well, how the heck did he know what a god looked like? No. We don't talk about those things. So let's move on to something else.
No.
Oh, what if
We'd much rather say, oh, he looks like Jesus. How does he know what Jesus looks like?
God?
Yeah.
Or, oh, hey, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Well, I wonder what that means. Oh, that means I have to fight with myself to not watch too much television. Like, this postmodern world we live in is insane.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I
No,
love how Timothy Alberino, we had him on the show on the Dig Bible podcast, and we asked him, and how we word it. We said, how important do you think it is that Christians dig into the Bible? And his answer was just beautiful, in typical Timothy Alberino style.
Yeah,
But he
totally.
said, he said, digging into the scriptures is important. He said, but only so much that you know the foundation of Christ. He said, if you know the foundation of the faith, the story of
Definitely.
Christ can defend him historically, theologically, and you have that firm foundation, then you can go digging. Because he said what happens a lot, he said people dive into these fringe topics, he said, that are great. He said fascinating topics. He said, Nephilim and, Deuteronomy 32. He said all these things, he said, I can talk at and about ad nauseum. He said, but he said, if you strip away Nephilim from me, you strip away giants and gods and the divine council. He said, all these fascinating subjects. He said, if you took them all out of the Bible and just left me with the story of Christ, he said, I would be
That's enough.
completely content. He said that's the problem. People are coming in with no foundation into these fringe topics, and you're just wide open to deception because you don't have that foundation. So that's so
Ricky
important.
and I were talking about that recently, about how when you're interested in stuff like this, it's so easy to be misled by Gnosticism. Like it's so easy to be like, oh, this, and then I'm like, no. Okay, that's all cool and fine, and I can do a bit of supposition as well as the next guy. Yeah. But in the end, it is the gospel of Christ. It is his cross that saves. And all that other stuff is fun for a Thursday conjecture, but it won't save a soul.
Yeah. And it makes the journey so much better, because if you have that firm foundation, boom, you have the foundation, and then you start looking at these other things. It's not just cool things anymore. Right. Yeah, they're cool things, but they connect dots and they answer whys, and it brings you closer to God and makes him more real than just a story. Absolutely. So, I mean, I felt like I was misled or kept in the dark for many years as a Christian about some of these topics, but I'm so glad it happened that way, because I took my time and I have a good firm foundation. Yeah. And
you can build on a firm foundation, but you can build whatever you want, not on a foundation, and it's gonna crumble again and again and again. Yeah. Doesn't matter how good the lumber is, or the brick is, or the stone is. If you don't have a foundation, it's going to sink and it's going to crumble because it cannot keep its shape.
I like that. I like that megalithic reference. Well done, Shelley. I was just gonna say, man, what you're highlighting is so important. I know that it's very cliche for everybody to get anchors tattooed on them, but I couldn't resist, man, because the hope of Christ is what anchors us to our very reality, right? And the way I heard a commentary about that verse in particular, which I love that verse for that very reason, is that when we are anchored to the floor, you're still going to be floating around in the water, moving around. It doesn't mean you sit in one spot. That's not what that means. On the contrary, you are buzzing all over the place, but you're always coming back to the same point. And like Shell just said, man, I mean, if Christ is the cornerstone, nothing will crumble. But if he's not, there's no cornerstone on which to build. So good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yeah, real quick, I guess, man, so you were part of the Dig Bible podcast for a little while, and now you're branching out. Obviously, you said you only been about 2 weeks now. Yeah. I mean, you kind of shared with us back behind the before we actually started and everything, but what is the thing that actually kind of pushed you towards the Prometheus Lens podcast?
Well, they say curiosity killed the cat, so I'm hoping that I don't get killed because I'm the curious cat. But, I mean, I've always...
They say satisfaction brought him back.
Okay, then.
It was unfulfilled curiosity that killed that cat. I love idioms, and I'm always looking to see what they originally were, because they sound so stupid nowadays. You don't have your cake and eat it too. Well, duh, you have to have the cake to eat it. You eat your cake and want to have it too. Curiosity killed that cat, but satisfaction brought it back. That's the rest of it. So don't tell me don't be curious. Meow.
But see, I love just, digging into the Word of God, but I love digging into all these other things that are connected. I like looking into conspiracy theory. I like looking into some of these esoteric things. I like looking into these secret societies, and God love them, but there's a lot of good-hearted Christian people that are friends and even family of mine. Like right now, I'm working on Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, and they're like, "Oh, that's a cursed book," and and you don't need to be looking into that stuff, but the difference is I have a good firm foundation, and these are the people that are ruling over us. So whether it's true or not, I want to know what these people think. I want to know what these people believe. And, you see in the news that, all about the aliens and just all these different things. So I'm curious. I want to look into these things and I want to know these things. And so we have the Dig Bible podcast, that's just, focused on the Word of God. And I loved the interviews and talking to these authors and stuff like that. And our current platform is we do one interview a month. So I just told the guys, I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still doing the dig, but I want to do something on my own where I can just kind of, take off and look into things that I want to look at. And because honestly, if I started talking about morals and dogma and some of these more fringy topics on the dig, there's lots of people that listen to that show that probably get upset and turned off by that. So this way I can look into all the fascinating subjects that I want to without my friends getting any backlash. It's all on me.
That's funny, man. Well, that's good though. That's good, man. I'm glad that you found an outlet for it. And it's so important it is important to deal with these issues because, they concern foundational things in our faith. And if we don't understand them, then we really won't have anywhere to go with explaining it to other people. But even worse, we misunderstand who God is. We misunderstand what the purpose of interaction with him is. And we misunderstand what the purpose of us being here is, frankly. If we're able to look at those mistakes, because that's really all the esoteric stuff is, right? They were bad decisions on someone's part, and that someone could be us or could be some celestial being or some anything, right? But at the end of the day, all the conundrum that we're in is because of someone's bad choice. And if we don't understand that bad choice, we don't understand God's original intent and where we should be going, essentially.
Yeah, and I'm a big history buff. I love looking at history and historic figures, and so I'm going to dive into all these subjects. But the key point though that I should have mentioned earlier was all those things. You got plenty of shows that are like that, but this one is going to be through my lens, a Christian lens and a Christian worldview and viewpoint. So I think that's what makes it unique, and that's why I called it, the Prometheus Lens. It's looking at all of these things in a new lens with a new perspective. And honestly, it's a good way to bring people in that are not quote unquote Christians, because these are topics that fascinate, many people across the board. So if I can get those people in and we can talk about these really cool, fascinating subjects, and I can give it to them in palpable language and be like, hey, while you're here, let me tell you about Jesus.
Right.
You know what I mean? I want to use this to reach out to people and talk about fascinating subjects that I enjoy. But at the same time, I want to reach out to those people, but in my own way. A good teacher points to the answer and doesn't tell you, and you find it out for yourself. Right. And when you find it out for yourself, you accept it more openly. So, and I love the church and I love, Christian people, but we have a tendency to be very preachy and stand over people and just beat them with the Bible into submission. And that doesn't work with everybody.
Well, I would say it doesn't work. You say everybody, but
it works
I
fine
say,
with 3-year-olds. You give them the answer, and then they all say, "Jesus, church."
Well, and the problem is, and this is my personal view. I think this is Shelley's view as well, man. But I would say, one, it doesn't work because that's not the way it was designed to work. God does not intend you to be led by someone else to Him. He intends other humans, other creatures, other coexisting brothers and sisters to point you in the right direction, just like you said. That's such a keen insight on that, and it's very accurate. But God is the one that does the change. We can water it all day, but it ain't going to grow if God doesn't show up as sunlight and make it grow. That's the only way it's going to grow. And so,
I like the analogy too of the whole image of God. It says in the beginning that we were made in the image of God. And what that means to me is, like, it's not that we look just like God. That way, when God looks down at us, he sees himself. No, it's we are a mirror, but we are a slightly tilted, inverted mirror. So that way, when the world, other people, see us, they don't see us.
Right.
They see God.
Right.
And then when God shines down his love and his favor toward us, we project it back out into the world.
That's awesome.
Right. That's why we're told to be ready with the
good
reason
answer.
for our
Yep.
hope when asked. So A, we better look like we have hope, and B, we better be able to give our reason as soon as we are asked for it.
And
if we're
notice-
not being asked, we might be doing something wrong.
That's right. Well, and then furthermore, I thought you were going somewhere else with it, but you're almost where I was going. It
finish
says
it
when
off.
you're asked. It doesn't say shove it in someone's face. It says when
Right.
you're asked, be ready. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. All right, man. Well, Shel, do you want to go ahead and kind of start with the background on how we got here and how we got to today's topic?
Yeah, absolutely. We found Justin and the Dig Bible podcast when we were researching for the Nimrod episode.
Well, sort of, because actually
Well-
I stumbled onto Justin on Facebook, and
Well, you did. I didn't. I found him.
oh, so you
totally
found them
separately.
independently? Oh, that's cool. All right, there we go. All right.
on Dig, and then when you were like, "Oh, he's on the Dig," and I was like, "Oh, I was just listening to that podcast."
I was just in listening to him.
Just
good
in
night,
time.
nurse. No,
Just
I
in
can tell you
time.
what. I didn't know there was necessarily a Justin. I couldn't tell you any of their names. I could tell you that I remember y'all are from Kentucky, but
No, hold up now. Hold up, Tennessee.
oh, my
I thought that was right.
Jeez, oops.
Yeah.
To me, it's the same
Man.
place.
My brother-in-law, dude, he was in Tennessee with his family. He's actually part of a missions group in Mexico City, which is another topic for another time. But he was there in Tennessee for like 3, 4, 5 years. He was there for a long time, man. As long as I was in Mexico. Holy cow, that's crazy. Yeah.
That's super
He
cool.
misses lots of aspects of it. My in-laws, they got to go visit him while they were there. They loved it, man. They said it was very, very cool. They really much enjoyed it. Yep.
Yeah, see, I'm
Oh,
from
no
East
wonder you
Tennessee,
weren't-
so it's all Appalachia, man. You West
Oh.
No
Virginia,
wonder you were
Kentucky.
not impressed that my husband is on the border of Kentucky and Indiana.
He was like,
right
"Oh,
now." He was
cool."
like, "Oh, that's wonderful." Great.
I let her step right up in all that crap. I was just like, all right, wait, you want to step in it? Go for it.
Knock that right into the catcher's mitt.
Very nice. Very nice.
Aye. You know what? I enjoyed the twang and I really enjoyed the dialogue. And I was like, oh, these are people who think like I think. They want to go deeper into the word
Yeah.
and they love Jesus. And so I was really impressed. And like, dude, I am reading everything I can find, and a lot of it is real weird. And I'm listening to all the podcasts I can find and in the documentaries, and I'm listening to everything on like 1.5 speed, which is how I listen to podcasts. I wish I could make my TV go that fast. I'm
But
not
our
lying.
twang
to
sounds
you.
really good then.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie,
Like
dude.
Boom
Yeah,
Howard.
that intro of like Prometheus and the Dig Bible podcast. It's just that guitar solo, that distorted. When you listen to it on like 1.2 or 1.5, it sounds god awful, dude. It's terrible. You have to listen to it on regular speed, then I speed you guys up.
There are some things, it's true. You just have to be like, no, can't listen to them that fast because I wasn't going for
Yeah.
chipmunks tonight.
I mean,
But
Ben Shapiro.
Ben Shapiro,
Don't listen to him on
love him to
1.5.
pieces, but don't listen to him on 1.5. So anyhow, going through all of the information I can find for how in the world Nimrod began to become a Gabor. And I had listened to one of your episodes, liked it, so I was listening to some more of the Dig. And pardon me if I don't use your whole long name. I don't use our whole long name. So
We shortened it on purpose, actually.
mean, I am all about the CTDW, I'm not going to lie. But one of y'all said, kind of towards the end, you just threw something in to your conversation about the garments of God, the skin of the Nakash, causing Nimrod to become a Gabor. And I went, wait, what? How do I find out more about that? What is that? Because we'd been looking, and we didn't want to delve too deeply, I'm not going to lie, because neither one of us wanted our browsing histories to reflect some of the ways in which he could have become a Gabor, like the ritual Exe Ajikme, So we had been looking without getting really into the dark web, because even though it's in our name, it's not in our computers.
It's not really in our MO.
We want the things that are dark gray, but dark, it just didn't have the same ring. Kitty cat, go away.
Not the
Sorry
aliens
guys,
so much.
I have a zoo. Yeah, not those grays. But when you said that was fascinating. I don't even know how you showed up in our Facebook feed. I probably do.
I think Facebook just suggested Justin to me, and I was like, oh, and I noticed that you actually, I'll tell you exactly how I found you, bro. The first post I saw with you was you were all excited about that Nephilim skull in the background there.
So cool.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's probably somebody I would like to talk to. So I was like, I'm going to follow him.
Yeah, Ed.
That's so
I named
great.
him Ed.
Is that legit?
No,
Is it real?
It's illegal to have human remains,
human
but
head?
it's
Okay.
a casting.
Reproduction. It's super
Well,
cool looking.
I
But I
mean-
did
Does
have it signed by L.A. Marzulli and Derek Gilbert.
Oh,
That's
that's awesome. I'm so jealous right now. I really, both of those gentlemen are normal food for fodder for us
Yeah.
too. Like we can't even, we tried to give kudos and shout outs to people who influence us, and we have not gotten through everybody yet.
Oh,
No, you never will.
No.
There's so many, but that's so encouraging for me to know that there are other people who are earnestly seeking the
Biblical
difficult
truths.
things of the word.
Yep.
That's it's very encouraging for me. It's like, have you ever felt like Elijah when he murks the 850 priests of Ashtoreth and Baal, and then he's like, dude, I am all alone. There ain't nobody but me serving you, God. And God's like, hey, I have reserved for myself a remnant, chum. You are not alone. You're not even the only well-known name alone. Obadiah is right there with you. Knock it off, dude. But we feel that way, right?
Yeah.
And I know I feel that way. And then, so like when you get together with that remnant, then, and you're like, I'm not alone. There are other people who love Jesus the way I love Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's so, so nice. So that's exactly how we feel with you, Justin, is that you love Jesus like we love Jesus, and that's so exciting to us. So tell us how, I know, sorry, I talk with my hands, but I have really cute nails all the time.
Shelly has been living on the border so long, bro, that she's actually turned into a Hispanic, because that's all she does. She talks with her hands now, like all the time.
White chicks talk with their hands too. Give me a break.
Whatever makes you feel better, Shelly.
You know what? I embrace it. I love my border city.
Yeah.
So just on all that in the Four Dragons way, I don't know if you know what Four Dragons is, if you've listened to us enough to know that Four Dragons is, Ricky?
I'll give the explanation. And over to the linguist. So we call ourselves Four Dragons, bro, because the word in Chinese for verbose, which is, talking too much, is literally the character for dragon written 4 times in a row. So we call ourselves Four Dragons. Because we talk too much.
We're both 4 dragons alone, so we're 4 dragons times 2.
Oh my gosh.
You might think that's 8 dragons, but it's put us on 1.5 speed too.
It's like Hydra. Hell, Hydra. Okay, go ahead. All yours.
But all of that to say, tell us more about these garments of God that might be part of the reason that Nimrod began to become a Gabor.
Well, I guess to answer your question, and I'll circle back through like some of the dirty details, but my opinion, this is, and I'll state that outright. This is my opinion, and I'll give you plenty of scripture on why I believe what I believe. But I think a lot of people try to have the mindset that it's this or it's this. Yeah. And I try to keep an open mind and be like, well, why can't it be this and this?
Yeah.
Right.
Typically in life, I've found, especially on the theological spectrum, if you got somebody hard-nosed saying, no, this is how it is, and then you got somebody, no, this is how it is, it's usually somewhere in the middle.
Right.
That's where you meet God. It's in the middle, because his ways is not your ways, and his thoughts are not your thoughts.
Justin, are you trying to tell me that you vote libertarian, bro? Is that what you're trying to tell? I'm just kidding.
No.
Hey. Hey, there is nothing wrong with libertarianism.
Oh, I was just going with the one person said it has to be this, it has to be this.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead, man.
I mean, if my vote wasn't wasted, I totally would.
But my opinion with the whole Nimrod, becoming a Gibor, or with the Gibborim, was these garments, and then also you have rituals and occult practices.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about before, to ascend. We see that in the New Age and all these esoteric secret societies. It's the same theme sprinkled out through every culture, every secret society, and it's that way for a reason. So,
wasn't there a snake who said something about a promise of ascension?
Oh yeah, at the very beginning, when you bit into the apple, what did he say? He said, "Ye shall be as gods."
Yep.
But I like Derek Gilbert. He turned me on to this with his book Veneration, and he talked about how the Nephilim, they were before and after the flood.
Right.
Well, right. There's he said that there was distinct differences between the two, because one was a genetic hybrid. He said, and the other one, he believes that through ritual, through necromancy and sex rites and things like that, that they would summon the spirits of their dead ancestors and these mighty warrior kings. And he compared them to the Vikings and the Berzerkers. For those that are not familiar, the Berzerkers were the ones that were just basically demon possessed. They were crazy. They had just crazy strength. They had no fear. Basically the equivalent of the Japanese suicide bombers. They would run in with no fear of loss of life, and there's been stories recorded that they lose limbs and still come after you, and that it take several stabbings and spears to kill these men. They were just enraged, crazy, demon possessed, almost like men. But they would do these rituals.
Not even almost, probably exactly.
But they would do these rituals and stuff, and bring in the warrior spirits of their dead ancestors, and they would possess them, and that's where they would get all this super strength and all these qualities that they had. So Derek points to all these ancient texts and writings and stuff that showed that the Canaanites and these giant clans practiced these things, and they would summon their dead ancestors, their warrior kings, which were the Nephilim before the flood. So he would, say that once they done that, that it not only were they possessed, but it, bonded to their DNA and they changed.
Yeah.
And they started growing and getting bigger and stronger. And so my opinion with Nimrod is that's what this was. It was a combination of these garments, because they were supernatural garments, and then these rituals and summoning the dead ancestors of the Nephilim for the flood, because that's what the Tower of Babel was. It's the gate of the gods. He was trying, to build a stargate, in my opinion, to bring back these gods that walked amongst them before the flood.
Yeah, and Gilbert talks about that. He goes into detail in, oh gosh darn it. Now I have to look and see what book that is.
Giants, Gods, and Dragons.
No, in I want to say Inception.
Inception, yeah. Yeah, he talks about the sacred geography and Bible.
Like he really goes into Babel there.
Mhm.
I read a lot of that when we were researching for Babel. Good book. That's also a real good book, man. Smart guy.
Hey, not to intentionally cut you off here or anything, but I thought that I would mention that I literally, when you started saying the word, talking about the Berzerkers, whoa, I'm not ready to have that on screen. Hang on there, guys. Chill out there. When you started talking about Berzerkers, I went, huh. There's that linguistic mind running through fields, bro. And so I started looking up where the etymology of berserker, or of berserk. So I'm gonna post this online so you guys can see it. You'll forgive me. I'm gonna make us go crazy for about 2 seconds, and you guys be good. There we go. So here's the interesting breakdown here. So berserk comes from the Old Norse word bear, like to not have. And then the Old Norse word became coat. And then there's also Old Norse bjorn, which changed into the word berserker, combined with the English word bear, and you get berserk. That's pretty crazy.
So you have a garment associated there too with the word.
That's exactly. Well, but not only do you have a garment associated, you have bear skin associated before you have a garment. How about that?
So something had to shed itself to give to another.
God, I love etymology. So cool. Oh, by the way, speaking of which, I wore this shirt just for you today, bro. It's a Dragon Ball Z. It's going with the Nakash.
Sugoi.
There you go.
I spent some time in Japan.
Did you really?
Oh yeah, I spent about 4 months with my job.
Okay, cool, man. Very cool.
Very cool place.
What do you? Well, maybe I'll save that for the end. You can tell me what you do at the end. Let's not interrupt your narrative. Go ahead, brother.
But I guess to get this all started, and I know some of you guys are going to be like, "Why is he starting here?" It comes full circle. It's like any good story, okay?
Because Shelley had to interrupt. No, I'm kidding.
You know,
we gotta throw you some kind of crazy beginning.
Bum, bum,
Have a
bum.
peak and twist back. It's
There you
like
go.
a sixth
that's right.
sense.
That's right.
But we're going to start off with Esau. So Genesis 25 and 22. I'm going to pull up my logos here.
Do you want me to pull it up?
I got it right here. You're going to pull it up if you want to read along, I
Yeah, what is
guess.
it? Genesis, what was it?
25, 22. And I'm
Give me a second.
reading out of ESV.
Give me a hot minute. I'll have it pulled up.
But here it's talking about the birth of Esau. And I always thought this was interesting, but I never realized this tie-in until I started looking in, to the garments. And it's pretty wild how all this ties together.
All right. Give me a second. I'll pull it up here. All right, here we go. All right. Go for it, brother.
No. So it says 22 says, the children struggled together within her. And she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. In verse 24, when her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red all over his body, like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So some things that stand out to me here. It says 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples are within you, and they shall be divided. And then it even goes on to say, one shall be stronger than the other. And then you go on down to 25, and it describes Esau. It says, the first came out red all over his body, hairy like a cloak. So they called his name Esau. So my first thing was like, okay, he comes out red with hair all over his body like a hairy cloak. You know, was Esau the first Bigfoot seed?
Red-haired giant.
You know? And then I thought of Genesis 3:15. When Eve took the apple from the serpent, what was the curse? He said, I will put enmity between your seed and the serpent's seed. So he's talking about 2 peoples at war with each other. And if you talk about the Nephilim, one could easily say that one was stronger than the other. So I thought that was pretty wild. Let's see.
There's so much of that theme too in Genesis in particular. Not to mention the firstborn in servitude to a latter born.
And when you go into the background of Esau, in my study notes here, it says that his people were known as the Edomites, you know, and from Edom, you know, the Dom in Hebrew means red.
That's right.
So
it does.
his people are credited with building Petra.
Right.
Petra's huge.
Yeah,
and you ever seen the doorways of Petra?
They're gigantic. I have always thought that it's a structure that was built according to angelic understanding by giants. Well, and what is that? The red-haired giants.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a common story amongst Native Americans, the red-haired giants. But throughout the world, there are red-haired giants. It's just crazy.
You know, it's funny that you say that. What's the guy's name? Jimmy, I forget his last name. He's the one that's been all over the place on tons of podcasts right now. He was just on Timcast not that long ago for he's the guy that does all the theoretics with Atlantis, and he was on he's the one that really claims that the rickshaw structure and stuff like that on Joe Rogan. I literally just stumbled across one of his posts today. He said, how about these red-haired mummies in Egypt? And he had like several photos of just all these mummies that were very red-haired and very not Egyptian looking at all. And people were like, giving their answers, of course.
Well, yeah, even a lot of the elongated skulls in Peru.
Yeah,
right.
Had red hair on.
The four who still exist and haven't gone down to some basement somewhere in the Smithsonian.
You're right, or some private collection somewhere.
You mean the Smithsonian?
Yeah. But one thing I thought was crazy was when you look at the birth of these two, and Shelley touched on it, you know, when she talked about some of the themes. A lot of people miss how similar the birth of Esau and Zariah was. In Genesis 38, 27 through 30, Zariah also had a twin, and Zariah's hand came out first. And the midwife tied a scarlet red ribbon around his hand, but he drew it back in. And then out came Perez. Later, Zerah came out with his ribbon still attached.
The sons of Tamar and Judah.
So Zerah, in the lexicon, it says that this word means dawning and shining. And
Sarah, while it would, seraphim, Sarah.
Yeah. And then when you look at the root meaning of when it described Esau, it said that he was stronger, right? Well, that's the Hebrew word yamas. And it's another word, another word associated with that is stout. And when you read, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, that's how Enkidu was described. Enkidu was described as, short and stout. So, it's tying him to strength. Let's see, Genesis 25 and verse 29. So we'll skip down, and this is the birthright.
Can I just say, I'm a little Enkidu, short and stout. This is my handle. This is my spell. It was going through my head. I figured it would go through yours too.
Oh, it did.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
So,
all right.
So I had to throw in the Esau birth, and the how he was different, described as stronger, come out, red and hairy all over, and how there's a correlation, with the word association with Enkidu, and Enkidu was hairy all over also. So verse 29 through 32 says, once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted. Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, sell me your birthright now. Esau said, I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said, swear to me now. So he swore to him, and he sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So the birthright, aka that's the keys to the kingdom. This went to the eldest firstborn son. Esau was on the verge of death. He wasn't just hungry, or he never would have traded his inheritance like that. Verse 29 says that he came from the field. This was, the wilderness. And it said that he was a mighty hunter, just like Nimrod. So he come from a hunt is what, most people would assume, and how it's actually taught. But what happened on this hunt that had him knocking at death's door? Verse 30 says, thus his name was called Edom. His people, as I mentioned earlier, was the Edomites. So most people, especially in your churches, will just say, oh, he was hungry and he hadn't ate in a while, and
right? Haven't you always been told that?
Yeah.
I mean, I was told that, and I was like, well, what is wrong with this guy? Is he a glutton? Why in the world would
the stupidest story I ever heard?
Right.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. And it's like, man, if I had the keys to the kingdom, why would I trade it for a bowl of soup?
Lentil soup of all the kinds. Give me a break,
like
man.
I
do too, but not enough to sell my house. Give me my house for it.
I've said this over and over, Justin, to Shelley, multiple times, man. I always say this. I could never reason in my mind that the Bible was not the living truth of God. I just couldn't come to make myself say, nah, this is not true. It's a bunch of hogwash. Even when I was like angry with life, and I just couldn't, I just couldn't come to that point. But God, we just castrated the Bible and took all of its
Man, that's a good
glory and
term.
power, anointing, and all of it, man, was just stripped bare. And so when we come to stuff like this, this is exactly why I didn't want to go to church. It's exactly why I didn't see any reason to stay within the four walls. It's the exact reason that I started a metal band, a death ska metal band, to share the gospel with people in the first place. Because when you think that he was selling his birthright for some lentil soup because he was tired, come on, man, seriously, like, and it's like I've told. Sorry, I'm not going to go on too much of a rant, but it's just like I always told Shelley too. Like, I would look at other people's religions. I would look at Hinduism, or I would look at Buddhism, and I've told Shelley multiple times, if I weren't a Christian, I'd probably be a Buddhist. And the reason is because there's power there, bro. There's power there, and people Christians reject that out of hand. They're just, it's hogwash, it's garbage. There's the one true God. I'm like, yeah, I know there's the one true God. Well, then point me in the right direction and show me what he's doing, and don't try and cover his tracks. He doesn't need you to cover his tracks. Sorry, rant over.
No, and that's the thing. I don't think, that 90% are just ignorant. It ain't that they're purposefully hiding this from you. It's
Fair.
just they're
Fair.
ignorant of it, and they're repeating what they've been taught.
Sure.
Right.
Because
No,
honestly, us as a
absolutely.
people, we are lazy. We are instant gratification.
Yep,
One click away. Don't even have to leave your house to go get your groceries. Walmart will bring them to you now.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And
why
as-
would anybody dig through the word and try to find something out? Because they got somebody telling them everything
Yeah.
that they
And
think.
then on top of that, we're looking too from a 21st century Western lens. It's so different.
Yep.
We don't have the culture. We don't have the context to understand so much of what is in the Word. And nobody does ancient Near East studies for their new converts to Christianity. That's
Sure
not
should.
something a church has. I mean, we definitely should. There's a lot of things we definitely should.
Well-
I won't get out my soapbox.
And I think a lot of that too is that I was looking at the Blurry Bros. I was looking at one of their they post a lot on Twitter right now, and I've been trying to be more on there because I find a lot of like-minded individuals and a lot of challenges to a lot of ideas that I have too. And I appreciate those guys a lot. Although I know that when you're online, you purposely ask questions sometimes the answers to because you want to engage with people, right? Well, one of the questions they said that it's so bizarre to them that believers are willing to believe in Bigfoot, but they won't believe in aliens. And coming back to this point is, well, the issue is, how much do you really want to know truth? How much are you actually interested in figuring it out, right? Because I can ask all day, and I do. I go, what do you guys think of aliens? And I hear that for the millionth time, they're demons. They're demons. They're demons. And I'm like, well, that's sure. I guess that's partially true, but like, are you really interested in understanding the things that we're hurtling towards on the earth that are inescapable? Like we're going to be caught with our pants down if we're not reading the word and trying to understand it. So anyway.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. That's just one of those things. It's like I talked about earlier. You got somebody hard nosed on this side, somebody hard nosed on the other. It's probably in the middle.
Something in between.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. But let's see. But now I want to go into the Book of Jasher because this is what gives you a lot of your missing context. And I know there's some people out there, that they don't read the apocrypha. They don't know who wrote it. The datings are, misconstrued. Nobody agrees.
Right.
But I'm the type of person that if it doesn't, how do I say this? If it doesn't contradict the Word of God, but adds caveats to ways that you can understand and connects dots, why wouldn't you look into these things? And like Mike Heiser always says, something doesn't have to be divine inspired to be important for cultural context.
Yep.
Right.
So a lot of this stuff, I believe, even if, we have proven that they were written later or not by the person that it's named after, to me, it doesn't mean that it wasn't part of
It
their
has no
oral
value.
tradition.
Yeah.
Right.
Long
That's
before it was
exactly
ever
it. The
written
oral
down.
tradition.
Yes.
Right.
So, but let's see, with Jasher chapter 26, verse 17, I wanted to add this for context because we never hear anything bad about Esau in the scriptures. But here I seen this and it kind of stood out to me, and I thought it was worth sharing as a caveat before I went on.
Do it,
But
man.
verse 17, it says, "And the boys grew up to their 15th year, and they came amongst the society of men. Esau was a designing and deceitful man, and an expert hunter in the field. And Jacob was a man perfect and wise, dwelling in tents, feeding flocks, and learning the instructions of the Lord and the commands of his father and mother." So there we see that Esau is compared to a designing and deceitful man and an expert hunter. So where I talked about the two nations, the two peoples at war with each other, here we see that some complementary verses to back that up and give you a little bit of context on the man Esau. But when you go to chapter 27, and before I read this, I'm going to lead with this question. What was so special about this birthright? And what was so special about the garments? I think chapter 27 in the book of Jasher gives you good context for that. It says, "And Esau, at the time, after the death of Abraham, frequently went in the field to hunt."
Sorry, man. What verse you at?
Verse 1, chapter
Verse
27.
27. Sorry. Okay, go for it.
Okay, and verse 2 says, "And Nimrod, king of Babel, the same was Amphriel, also frequently went with his mighty men," there's that word again, Gibor, "to hunt in the field and to walk about with his men in the cool of the day. And Nimrod was observing Esau all the days, for a jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau in all of his days. And on a certain day, Esau went into the field to hunt, and he found Nimrod walking in the wilderness with his 2 men. And all of his mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness. But they removed at a distance from him, and they went from him in different directions to hunt. And Esau concealed himself from Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. And Nimrod and his men that were with him did not know him. And Nimrod and his men frequently walked about in the field at the cool of the day, and to know where his men were hunting in the field. And Nimrod and his 2 men that were with him came to a place where they were, when Esau started suddenly from his lurking place, and drew his sword, and hastened, and ran to Nimrod, and cut off his head. And Esau fought a desperate fight with 2 men that were with Nimrod. And when they called out to him, Esau turned to them and smote them to death with his sword. And all the mighty men of Nimrod, who had left him to go to the wilderness, heard the cry at a distance. And they knew the voices of the 2 men, and they ran to know the cause of it. When they found their king and the 2 men that were lying dead in the wilderness. And when Esau saw the mighty men of Nimrod coming at a distance, he fled, and thereby escaped. And Esau took the valuable garments of Nimrod, which Nimrod's father had bequeathed to Nimrod, in which Nimrod prevailed over the whole land. And he ran and concealed them in his house. And Esau took those garments and ran into the city on account of Nimrod's men. And he came into his father's house, wearied and exhausted from the fight, and he was ready to die. Though grief, he approached his brother Jacob and sat before him. And he said unto his brother Jacob, Behold, I shall die this day. And wherefore then why do I want my birthright? And Jacob acted wisely with Esau in this matter. And Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, for it was so brought by the Lord. So here we have more context to that story that I just read. He was in the wilderness, in fact. And he was, quote unquote, exhausted, as Genesis says. But we see why.
Right.
He just had an epic battle with 3 Gibborim and killed them all, cut off Nimrod's head, and stole the garments, and then went home and traded them to his brother Jacob. And one thing I want to draw context to, verse 10. I'm going to read this. This one little verse again. It says, And when Esau saw the mighty men of Nimrod coming at a distance, he fled and thereby escaped. And Esau took the valuable garments of Nimrod, which Nimrod's father had bequeathed to Nimrod, in which Nimrod prevailed over the whole land. Okay, he's talking about the garments, and then it throws in here, and with which Nimrod prevailed over the whole land. He's talking about the garments, and because of these garments, he was able to prevail over the whole land. These must have been some really special garments.
Right.
So,
Oops, sorry guys.
I ask you again, what is so special about these garments? Well, if we stay in the same book of Jasher,
Is Jasher the book that they also call the first Genesis?
that I'm not sure of. I don't know. I've always just known it as Jasher.
Right.
Jasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen. You're just jealous because you didn't think of it first.
It's true. It's totally true.
But Jasher, like many other books, was not written chronologically. But later, in chapter 29, we learn that before the boys come of age, that he tried to send them with Shem in the mountains of Ararat to learn the ways of the Lord. And Esau declined. He wanted to learn to hunt and to be a warrior. So Jacob went and stayed with Shem in the mountains until they come of age. And then when they came back home, that's how, in my opinion, it doesn't specifically say this, but in my opinion, that's why he knew how special those garments were. Because he spent time with Shem and learning the ways of the Lord. And so when he's seen these garments, he sees the opportunity to get them from Esau. Because, let's see, chapter 7,
Yeah,
verse 23.
I see it here. All right, give me a second.
So, when Jacob went to spend this time with Shem, Shem told him all the traditions and the history about the pre-flood and Noah, and he was raised up in all the ways of the Lord. So when Esau came back from this mighty hunt with these garments, he knew what he had. So I'm going to tell you the story that Shem more than likely told to Jacob. So when you go to the book of Jasher and you're going back to chapter 7, starting in verse 23, it says, And Cush, the son of Ham, the son of Noah, took a wife in those days in his old age, and she bore a son, and they called his name Nimrod. saying, At the time the sons of men again began to rebel and transgress against God. And the child grew up, and his father loved him exceedingly, for he was the son of his old age. And the garments of skin which God made for Adam and his wife, when they went out of the garden, were given to Cush. For after the death of Adam and his wife, the garments were given to Enoch, the son of Jared. And when Enoch was taken up to God, he gave them to Methuselah, his son. And at the death of Methuselah, Noah took them and brought them into the ark. And they were with him until he went out of the ark. And in their going out, Ham stole those garments from Noah his father. And he took them and hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begot his firstborn, Cush, he gave him the garments in secret. And they were with Cush many days. And Cush also concealed them from his sons and brothers. And when Cush had begotten Nimrod, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up. And when he was 20 years old, he put on those garments. In verse 30, and Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments.
When he put on the garments.
And God gave him might and strength, and he was a mighty hunter in the earth. Yea, he was a mighty hunter in the field, and he hunted the animals, and he built altars, and he offered upon them the animals before the Lord. And Nimrod strengthened himself, and he rose up from amongst his brethren, and he fought the battles of his brethren against all their enemies round about.
It's so weird because Nimrod literally means let's rebel. It's like who would name their child that?
Well, see, the thing is we got to realize that these stories were written down after the fact. So a lot of these names, I don't believe, are their actual names. They were given to them to add
As
context to the
moniker.
story.
You know, there's a really interesting Native American tradition that actually might hold some bearing here in that as I was listening, Shelley and I listened to a really, really cool podcast with an older gentleman. You may have seen him. He's an older Navajo gentleman.
Anastasi.
Yep.
Oh, no, he's
Chief
Navajo. Sorry, he
River
talks
Wind
about
there.
No, he talks
well,
about
it's not Joseph,
Anastasi.
but he's very cool.
Very, very
like
cool.
Joseph Riverwind.
Well, he says that something that was very common, and I don't see why this wouldn't be a thing across the old world, is that when you did something in your life or something happened to you or you achieved something, you would get a new name. You would receive a new name, and it was based on your action or it was based on an occurrence in your life. And
It's a rebirth, yeah.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
exactly right.
In Revelation, you're
that
given a
in
white
word.
stone with a new name
Put
that
your
only
name
God
on
knows.
it, right?
Mhm.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
it's
man.
the whole Abraham,
Sarai.
Jacob into Isaac, Esau into Edom. Where it doesn't apply, by the way, is Saul into Paul. Saul and Paul are the same name. He didn't get a new name when he had his conversion on the road to Damascus. Unlike a lot of people think, and it bothers me that that's perpetuated. So
Well,
I'm just going to nip
and
that
it's
in
actually-
the bud right here.
It's actually not that weird. Mexicans, particularly Mexicans, have a super common practice that when you become part of some sort of group or something, you gain a nickname, and that nickname is your name. It is like the eternal moniker, and I have one. Like that's one that it's so much so that it's like an endearing sort of thing that I
Well,
use
let's hear
it for
it.
everything. El Cabazorro.
Ah, the roll of the tongue.
That's
I like it.
so.
Oh, that would be accurate for you.
So El Cabazorro is actually. You guys ever watch the old Hanna-Barbera cartoons? You know who El Kabong is?
Mm-hmm.
El Kabong is the
You're too young.
he's the horse dude that
He plays the guitar.
Yeah, he plays the acoustic guitar, and he dresses like Zorro. and he comes and he smacks people on the head with his guitar. Like that's how he defends against the evil one, right? Well, in English, it's funny because when you watch the original cartoon in English, everyone has a Mexican accent.
Did you smash somebody with the guitar?
I not yet. Thought about it. No, he talks in regular English. I'm El Cabasoro, right? And everybody in the show, everybody else has a Mexican accent. Oh, I am the villain, right? But when you watch it in Mexico, El Cabasoro is the one that has a huge white person accent. And so everybody else sounds normal and he sounds goofy. And so when I moved, this is kind of an offshoot, sorry, dude, but so I moved abroad when I was 19, when I was, almost 20. I lived in Mexico City. I moved to Mexico City. I was there for 5 years. And I went to do unconventional missions work. And
he was a screamo.
Don't say screamo, Shell. God,
Yeah,
you gotta stop using
when
that
I
word.
call it that.
You burned him up on the live the other night.
He
saying
was-
that.
It's
Yeah.
killing me. I'm like, I feel a part of my soul
Mine
die
is-
every time she
is-
says screamo, bro.
Punk rock metal. What the
That's
heck
that's
do you call?
more
Oh,
acceptable.
death
Just metal.
ska. Okay, how about
Death
death ska missionary
Yeah,
in Mexico
we'll go
City?
with that. We played in a metal band basically, and but the joke was always like, I'm the white guy. I show up against everybody. I play the guitar, and like I got the white guy accent, which actually didn't happen, but that's the name that stuck, man. And like anytime I see my buddies from Mexico City, it's like, El Cabazorro, ¿cómo estás? It's kind of what's going on, man. Kind of idea.
That's so great.
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. I think that those are just old world traditions that have just lived on. They've just continued to live on.
Well, they make really good sense, though. I mean,
They do.
you
I do play the guitar, and I
You
am.
do.
I'm just kidding.
You and your. I just think of how you
know
would
why.
tell us the shun for everything.
The
How
what?
you Americanize everything with shun.
Oh.
Like hot doggo.
Yeah. So in English, right? Everybody knows no problemo, kind of idea. Well, in
Yeah, put a
Mexico,
O
El
in it,
hot
in
doggo. Where's the El Bathremo?
Put a the in front of everything.
That's
and a O
right.
At the end.
so in Spanish, to make everything English, we just put shun at the end of it. So, bañation is bathroom instead of baño, right? Because you're trying to make it you're trying to make it English. Bañation, tengo que bañation, kind of stuff like that. Sorry, that's a totally off topic.
Oh no.
No kidding. That was a rabbit hole, man.
Anyway, I was just going towards the
Follow
nickname
this
thing
world.
that you obtain new names, like that was the whole vibe. So did not mean to
Well,
go
and
missionary.
you know what? If you name somebody in their teens or their 20s or their 30s based on their behavior, it has so much more value than you name this, wet, screeching, baboon-looking human that has done nothing except, screaming and wet you, and you give it a name that name it's a hope if you give your children names that have meanings.
Yeah.
And in the
You
Bible,
know.
I think they done it, just for storytelling value and context and word association. They didn't want to exalt Nimrod as a mighty man and a
Sure.
mighty hunter, so
Right.
they wanted to make him look like a fool. So
Right.
what better way to tarnish this man's legacy, who is known as Imarkar in the Sumerians Kings list, who was
Right.
exalted to godhood? Well, how do you demote
Right.
him and make him look as bad as you can in your version of the story? You call him literally a fool,
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But I just I loved how when I was reading and studying this, how all that just tied in. It's like, okay, yeah, there were skins given at the garden. Okay, well here's Esau, mighty hunter. Oh, he traded his birthright. Oh, okay. Well, that don't make sense. Why would he do that? I've been hungry
And-
before, but never that hungry. And then you
Right.
read, the Book of Jasher, and you're like, oh my God, He
that
killed
starts to
he
make
killed
way more
Nimrod.
sense.
You know, he
But
killed
then
Nimrod.
too, the whole birthright thing. What's a birthright? You know?
Yeah. And see, and now that's what I'll get back to, because now you know where you've seen the birthright and the garments in Scripture without even really knowing it, and who kind of had them there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I guess it goes back to the itching question. I'd say those that are not familiar now is, well, what were these garments? Where did they come from? Well, we know they come from the Garden of God, but you know, if we're digging in these other books and finding all this other stuff, surely there's more about these garments.
Right.
Glad you asked that question, because I was going to ask it if you didn't.
Oh yeah. And so when you go to Genesis 3, and Mike Heiser, he's the one that I learned this from. I stand on the shoulders of men like him. But, you know, and I'd say 90% of your audience knows this, but for the 10 that may not, I'll just throw it out there. But Nakash is the word in Hebrew that is used for the serpent. You know, Nakash can mean serpent, but it can also mean the shining one, or the one who practices divination. So when you read Genesis 3, if you put on your thinking caps and you think of the context, you know, as Mike always said, context is king. So number one question you have to ask yourself, if, you know, this word Nakash, you can have many meanings. So insert each meaning into this story and see which one fits better to you. And that will answer your question.
Yep.
So number one, snakes. Do they talk? Snakes don't talk. Number two, do snakes have legs? No.
Interestingly enough,
Well, I
they do
know
have leg
Josephus.
nubs.
When Josephus claimed he found one, but I'm just saying like that we can visually see, and you know, I mean today. But and then number three was Eve was familiar with this thing.
Right.
She
right.
trusted
That's
it.
always
She didn't question it. So what makes more sense with all those things in mind? Was it a serpent, or was it a shining one, a seraphim, shining, you know, that practices divination
fiery.
in the garden of God, that they saw every day, conversated with
It was
every
a
day,
dragon.
and was very familiar with and
It's a
trusted.
dragon.
So that's what makes the most sense to me. Okay, so, and remember that, keep that in the back of your mind. You know, it was a shining one who practices divination. This isn't another Elohim. That's why he said, you will be like one of us. You know, and he says, you know, you will be like God. That word is Elohim.
Right.
Well, and
That
they
can
were
be singular
they were,
or plural.
Sorry, I know I lost you guys, but it'll pick up. So they were in Eden, which is the mountain of God,
Yes.
which was where the divine council was. They were part of the divine council until they gave it away.
Yep.
They lost their seat at that table. They lost our seat. Our seat at that table.
So when you stay in that same chapter 3 and you go down to 21, here's where you see these garments. It says, and the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife garments of skins and clothed them. Then the Lord God said, behold, the man has become like one of us. That's a plural word. Well, who's the us he's talking about? Who else was there? This Nakash was there. That's the us. That's why he told him, you know, you will be like God. He said, you will be like Elohim. You will be like us. So there you had that rebellion. And let's see here. I said, so with the skin, I want to address that word here. I got notes on it. Okay, here it is. In my notes, it says, Adam is the prototypical high priest over all creation, and all subsequent divinely ordained priests trace their origins back to Adam. So Aaron's annual task of passing beyond the images of the cherubim, which was the veil, to place where God walks with his people in Leviticus chapter 16 and verse 2, serves as a reminder of Adam's once privileged position in Eden before the fall. The connection between Adam's original priesthood and the Aaronic high priesthood is the most notably highlighted by the prophet Ezekiel in chapter 28. And we'll get there. But the Nakash, aka the Shining One, I believe that these skins, a skin, or a covering, is something, it has to be taken, like we talked about earlier with the Berserker and the bear. Something has to be made naked. Something's covering is taken to give you your covering. So a bear skin, you got to kill the bear, take the skin, you're removing its covering to make it your covering.
Right. Even our trade with Christ, he takes our sins, he took our sin, and the word tells us that he covers us in his righteousness.
Yes.
So even there's a switching of covering of sin for covering of righteousness.
There's one place in the New Testament where it says covering. There's another where it says we're clothed in his righteousness.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So with all the priesthood traditions, making Adam, the first, the king and priest, right? So what covering did the priests have?
The ephod.
The ephod, right? That ephod was covered in tassels, gold inlays, and 9 stones.
Right.
I think it's safe to say that thing would shine. And it would gleam.
Well, especially being as in, I think it's Isaiah chapter 14. I think it's starting around verse 12. Sorry, I don't have this written down. But when Hillel ben Shakur, it says, I will ascend to the mount of God, I will ascend to the throne, I will be worshipped as Yahweh. Basically, when God is talking then to him as the king of Tyre, he says, you walked between the living stones.
Yeah, and that's Ezekiel 28. That's where I'm heading.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. Well, Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah
14 is where you get the Lucifer from
right,
the Latin Vulgate.
yeah.
The shining one, the son of the morning.
Right. Hillel ben Shakur.
So my thinking along with that, is the Nakash, aka the shining one. All those stones would be shining, wouldn't they?
Right.
Okay.
Living stones.
So it's my opinion.
Stone looks living.
Yeah. So it's my opinion that this Nakash was stripped of his position, and Adam was promoted and was given his covering. Ezekiel 28 describes the Nakash and his coverings. It sounds like the identical coverings for the priest at the tabernacle, given from God, and remember, as on earth as it is in heaven, right?
Right.
And Exodus 39. It says it's also a foreshadowing of when God calls Israel to be a nation of priests in Exodus 19 when they come out into the wilderness. So if these garments were indeed the skins of the serpent, the Nakash, the symbol of his shame and sign of his original seal from heaven, that would indeed make the devil hate you.
Even more, right? That's what I was thinking. Man, he
His
has
position
a
has
lot
been
of reason to
stolen
hate
from
us.
him, and now we are a nation of priests, and we are basically walking around with his coverings.
Let me ask a question.
Yeah.
This is an idea that I've had floating around in my head for a good while now, and because you're bringing it up in this respect, I'm really curious about your thoughts. For something to clothe you, it has to be killed, right? What do we think happened to this shining one? Besides, obviously, he lost a garment, right? And Genesis is fairly explicit about how he's going to move about and live about. So what do you think, if you had to put it into words, what do you think that looked like? Does my question make sense?
Yeah. Well,
I know it's a hard question.
honestly, and that typically something has to die for you to take it. But I mean, you could easily skin an animal and it live. But with Satan, what I think happened was basically what happened to the fallen angels in Genesis 6. They traded their heavenly bodies for earthly bodies. So what I think happened was, because if you look at the curse that God gave to the serpent, he said, on your belly you shall go, and dust of the earth you shall eat, for the rest of your days. I think that was poetic prophecy. It was saying that I'm casting you out of heaven, and earth is now going to be, your dwelling place. And that's why you get through scripture, he's the prince of the power of the air. And even Jesus says he is the ruler of this world.
Right.
He was, cast down to us and kicked out of the garden of God. Now, we can't say that the Bible is chronological, and also it's written by a God that's outside of time, space, and matter, that sees the end and the beginning at the same time. But we do see after this fall, Satan is in the presence of the divine council with Job, with when they were accusing the high priest. It said that Satan was at the right hand of the Father.
Well, and that's what his position is, the Hasatan, the accuser of the brethren.
Whether God calls him up, it's
right.
either he's kicked out and God comes down with the council with him to make decisions or have discussions, or it could be, just theoretically speaking, that he no longer can come and go as he pleases, but God can summon him.
Well, with interdimensionality, with the fact that there's more than 3 dimensions, it's possible that he had a sort of death, if you will, in a dimension.
Yes.
The same way I think that Adam and Eve had an instant death. I think that there was an instant death that day for them, that they no longer were able to be in the dimensions of the divine council. And I don't know what other dimensions, because we were born into that lack of dimensionality. We only perceive, a few dimensions, and we have an inkling of a couple more. We know quantum physics tells us there's 10 or 11, as does the word. But I could see, if it's Hillel or Lucifer, who is the serpent in the garden, losing some of his dimensional ability. He is no longer part of the morning callers. He is no longer a son of the morning. He doesn't do that any longer.
In Isaiah 14 even says that, how thou art fallen, O son of the morning.
Right.
And I think
So-
it's like a veil, like a spiritual veil, because like they were there, they were seeing, these heavenly beings every day, communing with them. And now look at us, fallen man. There's spiritual entities and spiritual warfare, things going all around us at the end of our fingertips.
Right.
But we
And
can't
we're
see it. We don't have
blind
the eyes
to it.
to.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like
Very
a
seldom does
spiritual
someone see it.
or how'd you call it? An interdimensional kind of like
Right.
death or veil put in. And what's crazy is that you mentioned that, it brought to my mind was when you read in Genesis 3, in the original language where it describes Satan, that he was more crafty, than, and all this stuff. It says
Right.
that word is a room. And then when you get down to where they bit the apple and it says, and their eyes were opened. That's the very same word, a room. And they were a room.
So he
So
was
it's by
more
biting that apple,
enlightened,
we took
and
on
they
the
became
property
enlightened.
of the serpent, of the Nakash.
Which, you know what, and this, I won't go far on this rabbit trail, but many of the secret societies seek after enlightenment, and they, I would say deify, but he already is. They deify the thought of Lucifer. He's the good guy in.
Oh yeah,
in-
the 33rd degree of Freemasonry. That's who they worship.
Right. Because
Scottish
he is
Rite.
the light bringer. It was, God maligned him, or Yahweh maligned him and made him seem like the bad guy, but really he was the good guy. He was Prometheus bringing down the fire to mankind.
That's exactly, I mean, the story over and over, right? Across culture and culture and culture. I mean, sure, we can quote the Masons because I think that's a little bit closer, but I mean, just not that long ago, Shell and I was diving into something, and I had not realized that Quetzalcoatl, which is the serpent,
the feathered serpent
in Mexico, was the one that not only brought light, he civilized the people.
Yes,
that was the explanation.
And he left riding a boat of serpents.
Mm-hmm.
And said he would one day return.
Yep.
And what's fascinating is the whole Nakash Shining One reference.
Yep.
Because what happened when the conquistadors came back with all their metal armor shining?
They
thought it was the return of Quetzalcoatl and just handed everything over to him.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. That's
they
exactly you the motif a lot. Yeah. So much of this motif comes back because in the end he wants to be worshipped, and he is not the only one in the pantheon of old gods. There are plenty of them, and they are powerful. We are wrestling against them.
Yeah.
Ephesians 3:10 tells us that our job, the job of the church, is to make known God's manifold wisdom to the prince of the power of the air. But that's what the church is for, which is crazy because, in Sunday school, I certainly was taught that the church is to tell people about Jesus. But it's so much more than that. We are to witness God's manifold wisdom to demons, and to principalities, to powers.
Well, and I think, Shell, that not to go too far down that rabbit trail, but I think that the original reason that became so front and center, sure, it could be because of the stripping of the power and the supernatural of the Bible, right, which we talked about at length multiple times. But I think furthermore, in a very American mindset, what we were trying to do is close that 1040 window as fast as humanly possible, make it disappear so that the kingdom of God can come back as fast as humanly possible. So in some ways, I don't necessarily fault the church for that, but on the other hand, like if there's no discipleship, then there's no direction, and discipleship comes from study of stuff like this, frankly. Right. Because it's a firm understanding and a firm footing for
and the thing is, Christianity, it mirrors God, he is manifold. He is multifaceted, and so is our walk. So should be our worldview. Within the lens and scope of God's word, obviously, but it's not one thing.
I like how
It
Luis
is a
Marco said in that
myriad.
episode. He said the sprinklings and hints of God
Yeah.
are throughout all cultures and all the world. Now, don't get me wrong now. So I know some people are already shaking their head. I'm not saying all roads, all religions lead to
Lead to
God.
God, right?
I'm
Not at
saying that
all.
he put sprinklings and hints of the truth in every religion throughout the world. There's such things as universal truths. And if you
Right.
think that God didn't speak to any of his creation whatsoever until the revealing to the Jewish people, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And it's
Absolutely. Well,
preconditioning
Methuselah would
God.
put Melchizedek would put a wrench in that
Yeah, but I'm saying that
Totally.
God laid the
machine of
foundations for
thinking.
the landing zone for that plane
Right.
many years
absolutely,
ago.
man.
And that way that when we do go to these, the 1040 window in India and all these places, that's why the stories are so similar throughout the world, because you
Yeah.
don't think God, the
Absolutely.
creator of the universe, laid the foundations that way. When we do go there and tell a story that's familiar to them, it sounds
Yes.
similar
Right.
to theirs, they're going to be more prone to accept it. God
Mhm.
has preconditioned the world for the coming of the Messiah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
totally agree.
I mean, that's why
And
the
I
word
mean,
says that
you
we are without excuse, right? I mean,
right.
that's exactly what God is talking about. I mean, I can't remember what for what Aztec philosopher it was that basically is even on the one of the peso bills in Mexico, because specifically he said no, there has to be a single God that did all these things. There has to be, and he recognized it without anything else but maybe oral tradition and nature itself to surround him, right? So
Yeah. And before we cut
Absolutely.
off, guys, I do want to read Ezekiel 28 for those
hit it,
that
man.
don't, because we've referenced it so many times.
Yeah,
And it,
absolutely.
it, it ties so many loose ends, and here Ezekiel is confronting the prince of Tyre. But
Oh
this is
yeah.
a two-part thing. When you read the
Right.
first, few verses, he's talking to the king, and you can tell it's worded to a
Right. That it's
man.
to a man. Right, right.
But then when you get to the second part, and like Shelley was talking about, these rulers, these principalities,
Yep.
spiritual wickedness in high places that are pulling the strings of the puppets of the people on earth, that are ruling subject through them. That's who he's talking to, and I believe he's
Right.
talking to the Nakash here. And he specifically, in my opinion, talks about the garments again. So when you start in verse 12, it says, and you tell me when I read this if this sounds like any human that okay? It says, "You are the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God." Here it is. "Every precious stone was your covering:
Right.
sardis, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald, carbuncle, and crafted in gold was your settings and your engravings. On the day that you were created, they were prepared. You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you. You were in the holy mountain of God, in the midst of the stones of fire. You walked. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created till unrighteousness was found in you. And in the abundance of your trade, you were filled with violence in your midst, and you sinned. So I cast you as a profane thing from the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O guardian cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I expose you before kings to feast their eyes on you. By the multitude of your iniquities, in the unrighteousness of your trade, you profaned your what? Your sanctuaries. So I brought fire out from your midst, and it consumed you, and I turned you into ash on the earth in the sight of all who saw you. All who know you among the peoples are appalled at you. You have come to a dreadful end, and shall be no more forever. So he's talking about sanctuaries. You were perfect. It mentions the same exact stones of the ephod. The only difference is only 9 is mentioned for him. We get an upgrade. We get 12. We get 3 more.
Right.
So I mean, that's insult to injury right there.
Right.
So it's shining. It's in all these different colors. And
Well,
it's
and in the
my
Hebrew-
opinion. But it's my opinion. Now, here's the dynamite stick on the end of it. That's what the coat of many colors is. That garment was passed to the one with favor in the family, and who got the birthright. Joseph is described as being given this coat of many colors, and what does he say? He has a dream that the stars, which was always allegory for the heavenly beings, bowed before him. It's my opinion that's the last time in Scripture that we see the garments of God, or from the Garden of God.
I have been on a tirade lately about the brothers of Joseph and Benjamin, although even Benjamin was not looked upon favorably by his father. When Jacob is dying, he blesses first Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and he does it backwards, and it really bothers Joseph. Joseph tries to move his dad's hands. No, you've got it backwards. And he's like, no, I don't. I know what I'm doing. But he goes down, and everything he says about his sons is, in my opinion, quite unfavorable. And I think what ugliness was inside of them, that if that is the garment that Noah, that was passed down from Adam down to Noah, that Noah saved on the ark, that then his son stole, that Esau fought and killed Nimrod over, and then sold it immediately to his brother. And it is Jacob's favored, treasured thing that he gives to his beloved son Joseph, and then his other sons destroy it. But then also, because my brain thinks this way, that's just one garment. What about the other one? Because there were two humans who were clothed.
Or in the very least, the one garment taken from the Nakash and split between the two.
Here's what I hear in my head right now. Dun, da, 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 dun, da, da,
Yeah.
dun. So it's going to be Indiana Jones and the garment of the Nakash. He's going to look for that the holy garment.
But an interesting bunny trail, the blessings given to the sons have astronomical ties.
No. Great. Now Justin bought himself
when you read it, and I don't have the verses in front of me, but I'll paraphrase it and you can dig yourself and you'll see that I'm right. Each one is compared to an animal.
Right.
And one was compared to a bull, one was compared to a snake, one was compared to a man carrying water, and then the eagle, I'm pretty sure. But there's 4 tribes, or the 4 sons, and they're all equated with animals. Well, when you look, those are the 4 cardinal points of the Babylonian zodiac, or the Jewish Mazzaroth.
I've heard Tim talk about this, actually.
And then even further, when you go look at the encampments in Exodus, when God gives the directions for how they're supposed to camp. I mean, he was very specific.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The holiest of holies was in the center. But when you read
Right.
that, those 4 tribes that were correlated with the 4 cardinal points of the Mazzaroth are on the outsides at the 4 cardinal points on earth as it is in heaven.
Huh. See, and I know about how it forms across the way it is done. Like the
Mr. Chuck
symbolism
Mason.
is really crazy. Yeah, that was Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. No. So now I have more. Oh, you guys never give me a break.
On the Dig Bible podcast, we covered that in, I think the name of the episode was On Earth as It Is in Heaven, I think.
Mm.
And we talked about all
Guess
the
what I'm listening
different
to
stuff.
tomorrow.
I love this stuff, man.
Very cool.
These are the little nerdy trails I love to take.
No, I'm
I
with
do
you,
too. Like I really love how God gives Easter eggs.
man. Yeah.
You know?
Seek and ye shall find.
They're
It's there for those who
everywhere.
seek.
There is so much. Yeah, he said, if you seek me, you'll find me when you seek me with your whole heart, man. Jeremiah 29:14. If you want to know God, it is not hard. And what I have found too is people who want to know the truth, like genuinely know the truth, you see their journey, especially in the
They're hitting the trail.
Yeah.
You see them.
Yeah. It's apparent in their
right.
conversation.
I don't know if you heard Yahweh.
No, we didn't hear anything. What'd you say?
Oh, I said that when you see people looking for the truth, you get to watch their journey towards Yahweh.
Yeah.
You see it, like Peterson. I think Russell is going to get there. Russell Brand.
Rogan's well on his way.
Joe Rogan. He's another one. Like, I love it. I see them, and you can see that they're true seekers of truth. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus, please. They're searching for you. You said, when we seek you, we will find you. And I see that frequently.
Yeah.
I'm claiming those men's salvation.
Yeah,
for sure.
And what's crazy is how, he even said, there's so much symbolism in everything. Like you said, the Easter eggs, even with the Hebrew language. When you see drop caps, in the Old English Bibles, those are not just fancy little boxes with pretty little twisty letters.
Right.
They copied them from the Hebrew Bible. Those were basically headlines like on a newspaper. So that first letter was a symbol, and it had a word associated to it, like Genesis. Right. The first symbol is a bet. Well, the bet is a symbol for home. So that's telling you that the book of Genesis is about home.
Yeah.
And what's so cool is, Jesus, what did he say? He said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. You shall know the truth, and truth shall set you free. Well, he said, I am the Alpha, the Omega, right?
Yep.
So he's saying I'm the beginning, I'm the end, but he's also everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Hebrew alphabet has 22 letters. Okay. The first one is a Aleph, which was the symbol for God.
Right.
Okay. And then the Tav was a cross. He's saying, I am God to the cross. Mm-hmm. But when you go to the very center letter, which is number 11, was the Mem, which was the symbol for the waters, the abyss, the chaos. So there's chaos in the midst of it, right? But, and this is amazing, when you put those 3 letters together, Aleph, Mem, Tav, that makes a word. And that word is truth. I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And you shall know the truth. You shall know Jesus. And Jesus will set you free.
That's awesome.
Yes, he will. Man, that's so good.
It's beautiful stuff.
It is. He's pretty amazing. Yeah.
I don't think that quite captures it.
We don't have enough good words.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool, man.
Like sometimes praying, I try to give God more than the paltry words we have. There just aren't enough. Like this morning, I don't know, I was praying with Rick over life, honestly, on Marco Polo, man, and it's like he is so astonishing. We just don't have enough superlative words to tell God about himself, you know?
And the fantastic thing about about God is that while that is so unbelievably true, there's no doubt in my mind that I've told God a million times, man, I would get, like frustrated sometimes, be like, well, why would I even tell you? Like, you already know everything. You already can do everything. You already are more than I could even describe. Nothing I give you is of any worth or will make you worth any more than you already are. And the fascinating and wonderful thing is that doesn't matter. He's just there for you. He's just there to hang out with you. He just wants to hang out with you. He wants to spend time with you. He wants you to get to know him because he already knows you 100%, right? But he wants you to
and
enjoy
he likes us,
the relationship.
like, despite ourselves, he loves us. That
is
And there's no religion like it.
it's 'cause it's not
Every
a
religion in the
though.
world requires works and for you to give your blood
Yeah.
for paradise. This is the only religion that is on faith and that your God sheds his blood for you.
That's because, as Shelley and I have pointed out, and we were actually talking and praying about I was praying about this, and Shelley and I were talking about it for a while. I'm sure she thought about it and prayed about it too. But I said, Lord, what's the deal? These guys are gods too. Like, are they worth? I mean, what do we do with that? And God goes, yeah, they're gods, but not all gods were made for worship.
And it's a divine family, and that's one of the key things that I think people miss out on by not having this supernatural worldview and seeing it in the context of the original writers, because the original story, it's all about the family of God. And God didn't need us. He wanted a family. So he made our elder brothers, which was the Elohim.
Mm-hmm.
And then he made us. And then just like any family, you have strife and fighting. And it's the parable of the prodigal son. It's about the heavenly brothers, the elder brothers that was there in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then us that rolled in pig slop. And he welcomes us back with open arms.
Right.
And it's about community and family and coming back into the family of God. And without the supernatural worldview and knowing these things, you miss a beautiful story.
You do. So much of the astonishing love God has for us is overlooked because it's hard enough to get it as it is. We mistake it all the time. Oh, God loves me. Well, that doesn't mean that I can act a fool. I mean, I can, and he still loves me, but I'm going to bear the consequence for my foolish actions. Sorry, I don't know what word I said there.
You said, I think you said foolish accent. You was talking about me or thinking about me.
I'm actually a little bit weepy.
He's from Kentucky.
He
has
does
a
that.
crappy accent. Jeez, Shell, when are you going to get off that train, dude? Dang.
I'm never coming on your show again.
Oh, you must come on our show again, Justin, or we'll go to yours, whatever.
Yes,
but we're not as cool as the people you've had. We have not written books.
No.
We're just like,
No, you're just as cool.
Well, you're a nice guy, bro. We appreciate that.
This has been so awesome. I honestly,
it's been so enlightening. We might call it shining
episode.
Oh gosh,
I'm not sorry.
I told Rick we when we were brainstorming and deciding, oh, well, what are we going to ask you? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, dude, I don't buy into this at all. I was like, really?
No, I stumbled across a text that I read through, and it was explaining a lot of what you said. I mean, you added some beautiful little pearls and cherries in there that I was like, whoa, that's very cool.
Like some really good from God's word.
As you started explaining about, as I started, you had mentioned it, right? And then I started going through these two pathways, right? Some say that it was stolen. Some say it was just handed down. It sounds to me like you're kind of a middle of the road guy, and you kind of think all of it sort of happened. Yeah. Which, to be frank, I know we're coming back to beat this bush to death, but I feel the same way about a lot of things, man. Like when I ask people what they think aliens are, they give me, oh, it's this one thing, and somebody gives me, oh, well, it's this other thing, and I'm like, can't it be a plethora of things? Can't it be like a bunch of things happening simultaneously? Like life is messy.
That's how life is, right?
It's an entanglement of crap it's really hard. I mean, why is it hard for police to resolve issues, right? Because there's a whole slew of things happening simultaneously,
right,
and we have to untangle them. Jordan Peterson talks about this at length, right? That's why it's hard to make a social correction, because there's so many variables at play that it's like it's a little bit too simple to say, oh, well, it's just the one thing. So coming back to your point, man, I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again. I think it's great that you bring in the garments of God, but that you also like, dude, there was obviously some weird ritualistic stuff going on as well, because that's what we really came to the conclusion to, right? We were like, there's some weird ritual stuff that this dude was doing to become a Gibborim. Like that's not a normal thing to do, you know? So yeah, I'm gonna go with Tim Alberino and steal his quote and say, I'm happy to let my paradigm bend a lot more than break.
Yeah.
Me too. And you know what? That's what I was saying before. I was like, I don't know. I'll give it a 1 out of 10 for plausibility. But I have to say, there's a lot
solid
of
evidence,
merit to this case, man. And today, I think maybe I'd go with a 7, because I don't believe things just because somebody says them. I have to research the tar out of it. But this information was great. I took notes, dude. I took more than a page of notes. I know my lights make it hard for y'all.
Oh no, I'm not doing that crap. I have to go back and listen to this bad boy, so I'll sort through it in my head once I do that.
I like to have things written down, and I'm still old and old-fashioned, and I still write things. And man,
I got drawers full of these things.
I told Ricky I quit carrying this one because it's so heavy and thick.
That's why I bought this bad boy.
I have.
I'm trying to convert all mine to type now. That way I have printable copies. So it's taking time to retype all this crap.
Right, and like you said, you're still a 9 to 5-er. So are both of us, and there is not time to get it all done. But you know what? God's will still being done. He still makes it. So bless his name.
Well,
we've hit the 2-hour mark.
Yeah,
I know we'll probably pull a little bit out of here, but I don't.
Not very much.
Know, that first couple of minutes.
Yeah, all my fumbling and losing scriptures.
Oh, you were terrible, bro. Like I'm not ever gonna think about having you back on to talk about anything.
We've never done anything like that. We are so buttoned up.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey man, well let me
fantastic.
It was great. It was really great. We really loved having you on, man. Let me go ahead and wrap it up, and I'm gonna let you get the last word in. Give your shout outs, give all your plugins, because people are gonna want to see what you have to talk about, man. Very clearly. Guys, we are Shelly and Richard Lee, or Ricky, with a wonderful first host that we got, or first invitee that we got to have on, which is wonderful. We are the Christian Theological Dark Web, as you guys well know. You can catch us at solo.to/ctdw, as it is mentioned there at the bottom. You can also catch us on YouTube or on Spotify, or anywhere else you like to listen to podcasts. Guys, go follow us, go give us a listen, And man, frankly, go follow Justin as well.
Honestly,
get on that vibe.
Prometheus Lens Podcast. If you don't put podcast, then you get some weird video game. You guys probably know what it is. I didn't, and I was like,
did.
What is
I played a
this?
lot of Destiny.
I didn't play that much, but I was like, oh, I
everybody-
have that game. I was like, oh, I didn't know you could get that gun. That's
Everybody on the planet except for Shelly Alaman knows about this game. And I was like, what is this? This is not what I am looking for. Because
like
I
Halo
wanted
met
to
Call of
see you
Duty.
with my beady eyes
Yeah,
instead
that's
of
right.
just listening on Spotify. So go. Justin has 2 episodes out currently as of today when we're recording this.
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be more by the time we put this on air. The Dig Bible podcast. Gosh, I really cannot
tongue twister.
articulate
Big
tonight.
Bible Bike. I mean, both of our
The-
podcasts have obnoxiously long names, like
Right.
the Christian Theological Dark Web. Say it 3 times fast. Go.
Well, see, it was
No.
supposed to just been the dig, and then we came out with it, and then we seen there was like several the dig.
Yeah.
So it was like,
And that's what I call it too. I'm like, no, I was watching the Dig. I was listening to the Dig guys.
Dig
That's
guys,
what,
yeah.
You guys are the Dig guys. That's who you are. I'll grab a shovel. I won't expect that hole to dig itself.
that's right. Get your
I
hands
like
dirty.
your tagline.
Yeah, that's good.
we really want one of our goals with our meager podcast is to build a community of the other believers who are on this journey with us, and so our goal is to promote the daylights out of everybody who speaks into our lives, because when you find something that's good, you always want to share it, right? Pie tastes
Yeah.
better when you share it.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing. That's what it's all about. It's about community and about your walk with God and your journey. You know, that's one of the phrases I use on the Prometheus Lens. You know, it's the hero's journey.
Yep.
And with the hero's journey, what do? You go into the vast unknown. You slay the dragon, you save the damsel, and you come out on the other end a hero.
Yeah.
and hopefully you find some compatriots along the way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because-
You build a band of brothers just like the Argonauts, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were talking about that. I could tell you
Yeah.
were much younger. I remember Jason and the Argonauts. I watched everything like that. The Hercules movies. My dad was into them, and I have to admit I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them all too. But Ecclesiastes said 2 is better than 1, for if one falls down, the other will pick him up, and a 3-cord strand is not easily
Not
broken.
easily broken.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that,
Well, here we
that
are, all
is-
3 of us.
here we are.
Cool, man. Okay.
Justin,
go for it,
we
Justin.
normally end with a blessing.
Oh, yeah.
So, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we do the Aaronic blessing?
Oh, just what you said. Just check us out, the Dig Bible Podcast and Prometheus Lens Podcast. Websites are the names, so it's thedigbiblepodcast.com and the Prometheus Lens Podcast.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, all the different socials, TikTok. We actually have a community on Facebook, the Dig Bible Podcast community.
Yeah. We joined,
we all
actually.
we all just get on there and we share inspirational Bible verses and talk about, fringy subjects and give prayer for each other. And it's just to get together for like-minded people and just
Cool.
like-minded people getting together, spreading the good news, man.
Man, that's good stuff.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, Shell, go for it.
Okay.
Take it away.
Okay. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his countenance towards you and give you shalom.
Man. Well,
Amen.
guys, as always, man, God bless, shalom, and Maranatha.
Maranatha. Till Jesus
Maranatha.
comes back, man. Maranatha, King Jesus.
Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Thank you for watching this episode of the Christian Theological Dark Web. For questions or comments, please email us at thechristiantheologicaldarkweb@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, please look for the Patreon link in the description. This has been another production of CTDW Studios. Thank you, and God bless.